You know, when they asked me to do this, I didn't realize I'd be up first, then second, then third. The next thing you know, I'm going to be out there serving you all coffee as we move to the break. The other thing I wanted to be careful of is the tough thing of following yourself in a panel is not giving away everything you're going to talk about during the panel discussion. So I was about 50% there with being able to do that. So what I really want to talk about today is a little bit expanding on what we talked about in the panel discussion, what the theme has been of this, which is just this data-centric opportunity. And we've begun coining it as that, a data-centric opportunity, and that expands the entire marketplace that you're looking at, as opposed to just the data center, if we go from there, and that it's massive out there. I think the mega trends that you're looking at within the government is there. You know, we see that moving, we're leveraging them going forward. And then also, I don't know what's going on with the slide, Intel and partners have really worked together to address that data center opportunity and moving forward. Good. There's only one slide where that happened. Thank you. So in terms of the data center opportunity being massive, you know, many of you, every company's got this slide. Many of you have seen this slide, but it really starts to put in perspective what we've been talking about earlier today, which is if you look at where we were, you know, even 4 years ago and where we're going to be 3 years from now, it's a dramatic shift. And it's about data, and it's about mining that data and turning that data into decisions. So whether you're dealing with, you know, a smart office, a smart hospital, a smart airplane, obviously autonomous driving, you know, and even the smart factory, it's just driving massive amounts of data that you've got to deal with. The other thing that's happening is that the workloads have shifted, and we talked about this a little bit earlier today as well, that you're not just looking with HPC, high performance computing, as a workload. You've now got AI in there. You've got analytics and various forms of analytics as you're driving forward. You've got the cloud orchestration, network, virtualization. And then across all of that, and we talked about this earlier today, I heard it, the idea of security and trusted, and where do you go with that? So as you're driving this compute demand, you've also got this dynamic of a changing workload, changing application, and that's kind of the baseline that Intel found itself in as we were looking at what, you know, we were dealing with going forward. So as we had mentioned earlier, the government challenges within that really come forward with the mission and what everybody's trying to do. So whether that's smart cities, whether it's advances in healthcare, you know, curing cancer and driving from that, or other diseases that are out there, those weren't possible in the past. And now you start to say, you know what? In the very near future, these things are going to be reality. The area of cyber, and it's been the latest hot button, obviously, in this city in particular, driving forward is moving it. And then bringing things from, you know, the edge in mobility has also gone. So that's really driven a lot of what we're looking at. So kind of shifting from that to Intel Corporation. Christine, you had asked me earlier, what's Intel doing within that? And if you think about it, Intel, you know, even 3 years ago was known as a server and a silicon company. You know, we made a great processor and we were 90% of the processor market. But Intel's been changing dramatically within the last 5 years, and will continue to evolve and change, and it complements a lot of what we just talked about here, what everybody else is doing, what the market's doing, and everything else. So the area of IoT, the area of FPGAs, and driving to that, the network aspects, security, all of those things are now changing the market that we're looking at. So where we were 90% of the previous market, right now we're sitting at probably, I think I took it off of this, but I think 25% of this new broader space. So Intel's excited about this as a company. You know, and we're looking for partnerships with SAP and with others and drive that overall ecosystem to drive some of that new market opportunity and new market change. And we're excited. We think that the opportunities there is really broad and we can go after it. So what does that begin to look like? And it's kind of defining the data-centric environment when you go. So whether it's on demand or an innovative workforce, decision-making from there, the data-driven environment, it all comes and expands that mindset from being just the data center. This set me up quite well, as everybody else was answering these questions, to being this broad data-centric environment. And that's where we're trying to drive at it. And what it does is it takes you up channel. So it takes you from components, CPUs, chipsets, the Ethernet, up to scalable, customized solutions as you drive forward that's really going after either the enterprise, the comm service providers, or the cloud and its environment. So you're taking the components and you're driving them up channel to be more application-driven, more solution-driven, and that's, again, where we believe this market is going, where Intel is going, and what we can address. So this is kind of the money. I'll give you the advance. This is the money slide, when you look at it, in terms of where we see these changes happening and where it can apply to everyone in this room. And if you look at, weather as an example, and I know NOAA's got, they want to do 5 nines of accuracy 30 days out down to 1 kilometer, right? They've stated that, which is great. But then you contrast that with the hurricane that just happened. And here we are, we're sitting out there with 3 days to go. You saw a spaghetti map of where is this thing going to go? How fast is it going to get there? And none of us knew. So when we think we've solved the problem, all you had to do is look at the last week and realize what the problem is, and if we could solve the problem, think of what it could have done to areas in terms of everything from vacation planning on Florida's East Coast to, emergency services that are needed in other places up in North Carolina. If we could have solved that problem, think of the change that would have happened just in this last hurricane that came through. And that's really where the data-driven, the data-centric environment is all heading. And it's a combination of understanding what's going on out on the edge. So the Internet of Things and having smart sensors out there. If you're going to predict the weather, you've got to be out there all the way on the edge with smart sensors. You've got to have artificial intelligence on the edge. You have to have software and virtuality out on the edge. Then you need to bring it back. And this is where 5G comes into play within that environment, and your ability to bring back just the right amount of data. And we can pick any. I picked weather because it's pretty harmless and pretty current within this environment. But you can pick any application out there, and you're bringing just the right amounts back to that data center or that cloud or that hybrid cloud environment, and then you go through the analysis and the efficiencies that need to be done on the analysis of taking hours down to minutes and being able to do that in an environment that's very real time, all driving to a decision. And that decision is really, where's the hurricane going? What is the right genome that's going to cure this disease? What is, within a data center trying to drive a new physics model in a high-performance computing environment to create the right alloy for a hypersonic jet? And those are all the problems that you're looking at as you're trying to solve it. So through this whole model, edge to data center, there's a couple common elements. One common element is the hardware that's involved, and Intel's very involved in that, from that perspective. The second one is software, both at the edge, open source, private, all across the boards. Intel tremendously involved, but this is where partners come into play. Partners come into play on hardware as well. The third area is security from that. So it was mentioned earlier today that the area of trusted, the area of secure and security and cyber is something now that all of us has to consider, from the supply chain aspects of it, which is getting a lot of activity, all the way to securing that data end to end. So you've got these elements, these common elements that are there, and this is where Intel is focused. From our perspective, both directly, but also, as you can see at the bottom, with our partners. So utilizing, SAP, partnering with SAP, partnering with our ecosystem. Many of you are here today within that environment. That's the goal of Intel, is to try and see where this is headed, but also try and work closely today with the partners to get to that point, which is our real theme. So the one commercial I'll give in terms of what the products are that we offer going forward is you can start seeing they're broad. They're in all these areas. They're hardware, they're software, silicon photonics, some of the new areas that we're dealing with, and it's moving faster, storing more, and really driving to those decision points. So Intel Federal was started in 2012 as an LLC, to actually be able to partner with the federal government. And that's probably the only thing I'll say about Intel Federal unless there's questions on it. What I'd rather talk about is Intel in the federal space. And we have over 800 people that are dedicated or work within the federal government space. And we bring a lot of that together within one environment going forward. And when you expand that out, the partnerships that we've got aimed at this federal market makes it an incredibly strategic approach to what we do. So we've got the capabilities of FAR and CAS compliance moving forward, but it's more bringing the broader part of Intel, the one Intel and federal is what we look to say, and driving towards those markets and really aiming, I want to bring it all the way back to the problem sets that we had talked about, and trying to solve that. So I think in the interest of time, I'll end it to where I started it, right? So the opportunity is massive. Hopefully we've proven that out. You're going to hear that all day today. The leveraging of the strengths between Intel, SAP, partners, customer is what it's all about. And we've got to focus, in our opinion, in this room, on the federal market and what the problems are that we're dealing with. So with that, I will open it up to any questions you might have them across the boards. I was trying to catch us up a little bit, but any questions? Yes.
Hold on 1 second.
Hi, how you doing? I'm Paul Eder. Question is, how do you convince a non-technical audience that this is the solution that they should adopt?
Well, the people that know me in this room realize I probably fall into that non-technical audience aspect to it. But you know what? I really do believe it's back to the picture where you're showing the end-to-end, and you focus in on what problem you're trying to solve, not the technology that's involved in solving it. And the problems that we're trying to solve are right there front and center. That's why I grabbed the weather issue, going forward. And I think the technology really starts to fall beneath that. And the only thing that we're seeing within Intel is it's not one size fits all. That you truly have to take all these component parts to try and attack some of these problems. And then the software layer and the security layer are things that we hadn't thought of 5, 6, 7 years ago, and they're there today. Yeah.
Hi, Billy, listening with the Department of Energy. Are you seeing, from your perspective, observing or encouraging collaborations and leveraging between departments and agencies or offices that wouldn't normally be working together but have similar problems?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and I don't know, since the mic wasn't there, it was what collaborations are we seeing between agencies going after the same problems, and I came to Intel in that introduction. I came to Intel 3 years ago really to be involved in this National Strategic Compute Initiative when it was an initiative, and now it's beginning to come back in. And what I really saw there is agencies coming together, and the DOE having a leadership role in defining some of those strategies in some of the areas, but then all of the agencies starting to collaborate and come together. The other thing that popped out of that I thought was interesting, and it's starting to come back, is the area of public-private partnership. So where private industry can then say, in a cost share basis or a collaboration basis, how do we attack a problem together? So I would say if you asked 3 or 4 years ago, the answer would be silos, as was mentioned before. I really do see these, the needs coming together, and they have to. You know, because you really, the problem is not here in the US. We've got to look internationally and how do we make sure we stay ahead of what's going on? Good question.
We say IUI. Question is that one of the charts you say IoT and AD.
Now I need the mic. Now you need the mic. So
I'm sorry. My question is that one of the chart you have IoT and also AD. What's AD?
AI.
No, AD.
I don't remember I said AD. Yeah, I'll call it a typo. It's IoT and AI out on the edge. And what are we trying to do? And a lot of what we're trying to do is work within, you know, the environments of taking. We had acquired a company a number of years ago called Altera, and integrating Altera and what their strength is, and then into the software models with OpenVINO and some of these areas are driving a lot of the AI and IoT advantages out on the edge. And then if we can get that common software platform, which is the real challenge to do that. So we've got something called, you know, a one API common software platform that we're trying to do, and I'm sure others are working and partners are working to try and work within that environment. So it's really driving the edge to the data center, and how do you do that?
Right about the FPGA, you have that. So.
I'll go look at the slide. Any other questions? Great. So thank you for having me, and have a great day.
Thank you, Jim.